الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس. Dear brothers and sisters, we begin by praising Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We send peace and blessings upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his companions, and upon all those who have treaded in their footsteps and teachings of righteousness and piety. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make us from those who adopt the Quran and the Sunnah as our way of life. Ameen. When we look through history, we will notice that there have been nations, there have been individuals who have excelled and at some point then fallen down. We'll see that nations and individuals, the rise of nations and the fall of nations. And we see that this is an ongoing system or an ongoing pattern throughout history. And it will continue to happen. In today's time, we see that there are nations and individuals that are on the rise or at the peak, at the top. And we will notice that some time back, a couple of years back, a few decades back, there were different people who are on top. And now they're gone. They're no longer here. And 10 years from now, we'll see that the people on top today, now they're no longer at the top anymore. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. That this is how the world works. That we'll give some people greatness and we'll take it away from them, then we'll give it to some other people, we'll take it away from them. And this is the constant system of this world. Some people will be good, some people will be great, and then those people will be gone, and a new group of people or a new nation will come into existence. You can't change that. That's just the system and the pattern of this world which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put into action. Throughout the Quran, we'll also notice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions different nations and different individuals. Some of these individuals and some of these nations were very, very great people, great nations. You have people like Fir'aun, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions over and over again. And Fir'aun was a very powerful, a very great leader. Not great in the sense that he was someone good, but very great in the sense that he was very powerful. Very great in the sense that everyone obeyed him, and very great in the sense that no one went against Fir'aun. And we see what happened to Fir'aun. Likewise, there are different nations which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in the Quran. One such nation is the people of Ad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the people of Ad over and over in the Quran. In fact, Imam Ibn Kathir rahmatullahi alayhi, in his tafsir, he mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the people of Ad in more than one place, on numerous occasions, so that people who are reading the Quran can take a lesson from their incident and from their story. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these stories in the Quran so that, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran itself, that عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. These incidents, these stories, these narratives which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided in the Quran are meant to be lessons for us. They're meant to be things that we reflect upon. And they're meant to be things that we can implement in our lives. Meaning the same reasons why the people of the past were destroyed are the same reasons which we should be avoiding. In today's khutbah, we'd like to speak about the people of Ad. Who were they? What was so great about them? And why they ended up being nothing. To give you some insight on the people of to give you some insight on the people of Ad, the people of Ad were unlike any other people. They were unmatched as far as their strength was concerned, as far as their talent, technology, and understanding and knowledge was concerned. These people, the people of Ad, were at the pinnacle of greatness. They were the mightiest nation. They were the greatest nation of that time. Right? There was no other people that were parallel or on the same playing field as the people of Ad. These people were completely beyond everyone else. The thing about the people of Ad was they were able, Allah gave them so much knowledge, right? Allah gave them knowledge of how to use the natural resources to their benefit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them very, very strong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them very, very talented. And with that came their arrogance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to them Prophet Hud alayhi salam. And Hud alayhi salam, as all other prophets, went out to remind the people of Ad, to bring them back to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remind them of the shortness of this world, to guide them back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and basically wake them up. It's interesting that an entire surah is named after after the Prophet Hud alayhi salam. Why? Because again, this nation was such a mighty nation. This nation was such a great nation. And Allah mentions it over and over again that we as Muslims truly need to reflect on how this nation was and what ended up happening to them. Because we could be in this very same situation as them. So there's an entire surah named after Hud alayhi salam. Additionally, what's interesting is that the people of Ad lived in Ahqaf. Ahqaf is a place which is in Yemen. The scholars of tafsir, they mention that Ahqaf is in Yemen, and this is where the people of Ad lived. And there's a surah in the Quran named Ahqaf. Again, in order to explain to us and show us the importance of the lessons that we can learn from the people of Ad. The people of Ad were very great people. They were a very mighty nation, and Allah highlights their examples over and over again throughout the Quran so that we do not forget about the might and greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That's really the main point. That Allah spends so much time in the Quran explaining and describing the greatness, the power, the strength of the people of Ad, and then in comparison to them, Allah shows His greatness, His power, and His strength. And it's a reminder for us, for anyone with any sort of intellect, that wow, you have these great people, this great nation, and Allah completely wiped them away. Why? Because Allah is so much more powerful. Allah is the greatest. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most powerful. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and greatness supersedes and surpasses the might and greatness of any individual and nation. In terms of their strength and their talent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَزَادَكُمْ فِي الْخَلْقِ بَسْطَةً, that we gave them so much strength in the way we designed their bodies. The people of Ad were not normal human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them with a lot of strength. And Allah blessed them with strength in the sense that they were very, very tall people. Right? In some narrations of the hadith, it mentions that these people were as tall as trees, like 60, 70 feet tall, right? Taller than trees. And they were very strong. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them with, this talent, this special power which Allah gave them, was that in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّتِي لَمْ يُخْلَقْ مِثْلُهَا فِي الْبِلَادِ, that these people were so well designed that there was no one else, there was no other human beings that were created like the people of Ad. That's how talented and strong these people were. But along with that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the ability to sculpt and carve very, very beautiful buildings out of mountains, not boulders or rocks, right? If someone takes a rock or a boulder and they carve something out of it, that's something, special. The person is talented. But these people of Ad were so talented, so skilled, that they would go up to the mountains and carve homes and buildings out of the entire mountain, right? Imagine, out of the entire mountain, they'd make the mountain into a beautiful home, a beautiful structure. And what's interesting is that till today, these structures are still there. These buildings, these carvings are still there. If you go, you'll see them. And they're so well manufactured, so well carved out and sculpted. That was the blessing which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them. For them to make these buildings and to carve them out, to sculpt them, was very easy for them. In fact, what they did was, they did this as a pastime, as a hobby, right? Hud alayhi salam, when he saw that his people were so caught up, when someone becomes really good at something, they just, do it just to show off, just because it's so easy for them. So Hud alayhi salam noticed what was going on, and he warned them, and he said, أَتَبْرُونَ بِكُلِّ رِيعٍ آيَةً تَعْبَثُونَ. That why is it that you carve and make these buildings out of every single mountain that you come across, every tall structure that you come across, you make these buildings تَبَعَثُونَ, just for no reason at all. It's not like they're building these homes, or they're carving these homes because they need to live in there, or because there's a shortage of homes. They're just making this because تَبَعَثُونَ, they have nothing better to do. They're just doing it as a pastime. They're forgetting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're so engrossed in that because they're so good at it, right? They're forgetting who gave them that blessing. So these people are very skilled. But along with their might and greatness and power, right, came their arrogance. They were very, very arrogant people. They knew there was no one else that matched them in their strength. There was no one else that matched them in their intellect, in their technology. In order to make those buildings, you have to be very, very knowledgeable. Why? Because the architecture has to be right. Everything has to be on point, otherwise it'll collapse. So these people are very smart and technologically advanced people. And with that came their arrogance. They knew that there was no one else that could match what they had. So they were very arrogant people. And in fact, they were very oppressive as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا بَطَشْتُمْ بَطَشْتُمْ جَبَّارٍ, that when they would conquer, or when they would conquer another nation, بَطَشْتُمْ جَبَّارٍ, they would completely annihilate them. They were a very, very oppressive nation. So with these, you have to go back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives these people all this greatness, all this power, all this technology, and all this knowledge. And instead of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they forget about all this. And what do? They begin to feel and they begin to think that they are the ones who gave themselves all these gifts. And they begin to become arrogant. They begin to oppress others who had less than them. Why? Because now they're so deluded with what they have. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He says, فَأَمَّا عَادٌ فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ وَقَالُوا مَنْ أَشَدُّ مِنَّا قُوَّةً. They became so arrogant that they would say that مَنْ أَشَدُّ مِنَّا قُوَّةً, that who is more powerful than us? Who is more stronger than us? There's no one else that can match our power. So Hud alayhi salam was sent to them in order to warn them and guide them back to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He reminded them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favors upon them, right? All these things which they have, all the strength, knowledge, skill, all a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He disapproved of their wastefulness and oppression, right? As we mentioned, that they were very wasteful. That all these buildings that they were carving, it was out of waste. It wasn't because they needed these buildings. It was just because they felt like doing it. It was their pastime. So Hud alayhi salam completely disapproved of their wasteful nature and of the oppression that they were engaged in. In the Quran, as we mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَتَبْنُونَ بِكُلِّ رِيعٍ آيَةً تَعْبَثُونَ وَتَتَّخِذُونَ مَصَانِعَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَخْلُدُونَ. That they would build these very, very great structures. Number one, just as a pastime, as a hobby. And number two, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَخْلُدُونَ. They made these structures, they made these big buildings, so that when they saw it, it reminded themselves of how great they were. And that just increased their delusion, right? They saw all these buildings, look how great we are, look at all these great buildings we have, look at all this wealth and power and intellect we have, all this knowledge that we have. No one can harm us, no one can touch us, right? We're invincible, no one can do any harm to us, right? So that was the sort of mindset, and that was the sort of life that they were living. So Hud alayhi salam would remind them, Hud alayhi salam would say, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونَ, that fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَطِيعُونَ, and follow me because I am the messenger of Allah. وَاتَّقُوا الَّذِي أَمَدَّكُمْ بِمَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Now Hud alayhi salam is reminding them, Hud alayhi salam is saying that fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has أَمَدَّكُمْ بِمَا تَعْلَمُونَ, who has given you all this knowledge, everything that you know, all the skills that it requires for you to carve these buildings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them to you. أَمَدَّكُمْ بِأَنَعَمِ وَبَنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped you and gave you all this wealth and your families and children. وَجَنَّاتِ وَعُيُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted you safety and security, offering you this place to live in where gardens. إِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابِ يَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. And then finally Hud alayhi salam says to them that things are looking really good. Things are looking great, but I'm afraid, I'm scared that things will not always be like this. And this goes back to what we had initially mentioned, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ, that this is the system, this is the pattern of life, that there will be really, really great times where everyone is happy, where things are looking great, and then it'll crash. You look at any sort of, not just the rise and fall of nations, but even you see our economy as well. There are times in our economy where things are looking great. You look at times when in our economy, the people are able to afford whatever they want, and then the economy collapses, and then there's all this chaos, all this difficulty and hardship, right? And that's the pattern. It just goes in a cycle. And likewise, this is how nations and people are. You see nations that prosper, individuals who prosper, and then they'll fall. And it's a cycle. It repeats over and over again. And the people who don't keep that in mind, the people who forget that, are the people who suffer. During good times, if we forget that these good times will not last forever, during these good times, if we, just a very, very simple example. If the economy is doing really good, and everyone's making a lot of money, and someone begins to think that the economy will be good forever, and they never save up any money. They keep on telling themselves, the economy is going to be great, I'll keep on making a lot of money, and I'll just keep on spending money, and then I'll eventually save up. And when the economy crashes, they don't have a job anymore, and they have nothing in their bank account. That person is going to be in trouble. Whereas you have another person, when the economy is doing great, they're making a lot of money, and they're saying, but I still need to save because just a couple of years back, the entire economy crashed. So I have to be ready for that, right? Because it's not going to last forever. Obviously, the person who's mindful, the person who takes lesson and remembers the past, takes a lesson from the history, that person is the one that will succeed. So this is the lesson we have to keep in mind. And this is what Hud alayhi salam was reminding the people of Ad about. That إِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. That all this is going great. Allah blessed you with so many things. Allah blessed you with knowledge. Allah blessed you with safety, security, prosperity, children, families, happiness. But do you really think that'll last forever? Do you really think that's going to be eternity for you? إِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. I'm scared that these times will go away and a very difficult time will come. Unless you begin to, unless you turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the message of Hud alayhi salam. That turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That times are great. Don't let these good times make you forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only during times of difficulty. So when Hud alayhi salam reminded these people of reality, they were, number one, completely heedless of the warnings of Hud alayhi salam. And they went even one step beyond. It's not that they were just ignoring Hud alayhi salam. They began to make fun of, mock, and jest Hud alayhi salam. They started saying things like, they said, إِنَّا لَنَرَاكَ فِي سَفَاهَةٍ وَإِنَّا لَنَظُنُّكَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. He said, they began to tell Hud alayhi salam, you seem like you're someone who doesn't understand. You seem like you're someone stupid. Right? You don't know what's going on. Right? The people of Ad considered Hud alayhi salam as someone who was intellectually inferior. They considered Hud alayhi salam as someone that was irrelevant to society. Who are you to tell us? You're not as good as we are. You don't have the same knowledge or strength or wealth as we have. Who are you to tell us what to do? So this is what they would say to Hud alayhi salam. And they would say, مَا هَذَا إِلَّا بَشْرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يَأْكُلُ مِمَّا تَأْكُلُونَ مِنْهُ وَيَشْرَبُ مِمَّا تَشْرَبُونَ. That, how can you be a messenger of God? How can you be a messenger of Allah? You're just like us. We eat, we drink, you eat, you drink. You're just a normal human being like we are. In fact, we're even better than you. We're stronger, we have more knowledge, we have more wealth. So this is what they would say to Hud alayhi salam. And at some occasions, what they would say to him is that the message you're telling us about Allah and all these things about the hereafter, all this is nonsense. It's not real. It's not true. It's just what people of the past would say. And you hear this so often nowadays. That, religion, that's nonsense. We have science now. Science solves everything for us. We know where we came from. We know what's going to happen. The fact is, you don't know where you came from, right? And science does not answer. We use science for our benefit. We utilize science in order to understand how the world works. But science is not a religion. It's not our God. It doesn't answer everything. It doesn't tell us where we came from. It doesn't tell us what's going to happen after we die, where we're headed. It doesn't explain to us what sort of lifestyle we need to live, right? Yet we hear this so often in today's time. We hear this so often in today's time. That all this religion stuff, it's what your parents spoke about. It's what the past generation spoke about, right? We're so advanced now. We know everything. And this is the sort of message they give to Hud alayhi salam. That, what you're telling us about Allah, what you're telling us about meeting Allah after we die, all this is nonsense. It's what the people of the past would talk about when they didn't know anything. But now that we know, now that we're able to discover all these things, now that we have so much technology, we know the reality. And the reality is we're the most powerful, we're the greatest people, right? And there's nothing that's going to harm us. So this is the sort of response they gave to Hud alayhi salam. And Hud alayhi salam continued to warn these people, continued to remind these people, until eventually what happened was they even began to make fun of the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They began to say things like, وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُعَذَّبِينَ, that no one can punish us. Did you see our buildings? Look how strong we are. Look how skilled we are. Look how much technology we have. Who's going to harm us? Right? No one can harm us. وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُعَذَّبِينَ, no one can harm us, no one can conquer us, no one can punish us. And when Hud alayhi salam would remind them of the punishment of Allah, that Allah was the most powerful, Allah gave them all this, they would say, well, if you're really telling us the truth, then bring it. Right? Show us the punishment of Allah. Tell Allah to punish us now. This is how arrogant they became. Until the punishment of Allah actually did arrive. And when the punishment of Allah came, there was no escape for them. And how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punish them? Initially, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped the rain, right? Allah stopped the rain and there were droughts. So the land became very dry. The land which was at one point very fertile, it now became dry and arid. Then after the drought took place for some time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent these clouds. And when the people of Ad saw these clouds, they were saying, wow, subhanallah, they didn't say subhanallah. They said, wow, look at those clouds, right? Those clouds are going to bring us rain. They're going to bring us water so that finally this drought can leave and we can go back to living our normal prosperous lives. In reality, these clouds brought chaos and destruction. For 7 nights and 8 days, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, without any sort of interruption at all. There was very, very heavy rain, torrential rains, and very violent winds. Sometimes when there's a storm and you hear the wind and it's so loud, it's going so fast, it sounds like it's screaming, right? The wind begins to make such a loud noise. It sounds like it's screaming. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran. He says, وَأَمَّا عَادٌ فَأُهْلِكُوا بِرِيحٍ صَرْصَرٍ عَاتِيَةٍ. that as for Ad, we destroyed them. فَأُهْلِكُوا, they were destroyed. بِرِيحٍ صَرْصَرٍ عَاتِيَةٍ, with winds which were violent and screaming. Very, very strong winds. Just a couple of months back, there were hurricanes and storms in Texas and in Florida. And these winds were going at hundreds of miles per hour. Right? That if they were pulling out trees and destroying things. Now imagine over here where it was 10 times that. It was much more severe. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them with the natural forces. Allah destroyed them with these violent winds and rain. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them to such an extent where there was nothing of them left over. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا تَذَرُ مِنْ شَيْءٍ أَتَتْ عَلَيْهِ إِلَّا جَعْلَتُ كَالرَّمِيمِ. That this punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was so severe, it did not leave anything behind. The only thing that was left behind were their buildings, right? The massive buildings that they built and they constructed, that was the only thing left behind. And in fact, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba once passed by these buildings on a conquest, and they passed by, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam pointed it out. He said, this is where the people of Ad once were, right? This is where the people of Ad and Thamud were once. And their buildings were left behind so that believers, the people of intellect, can see them and learn a lesson, so they can take heed. That the people who built these magnificent buildings were very great people, very powerful people. Yet when they began to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely wiped them out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and might supersedes and surpasses the power and might of anyone or anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely destroyed them, and nothing of them remained. Allah finally says in the Quran, سَخَّرَهَا عَلَيْهِمْ سَبَعَ لَيَالٍ وَثَمَانِيَةَ أَيَّامٍ حُسُومًا فَتَرَى الْقَوْمَ فِيهَا صَرَعَا كَأَنَّهُمْ أَعْجَازُ نَخْلٍ خَاوِيَةٍ. That we unleashed upon them 7 nights and 8 days of very strong winds and rain. And فَتَرَى الْقَوْمَ فِيهَا صَرَعَا. And after this punishment, if you had to get an aerial view of that area, you would see that these people, the people of Ad, as we mentioned, they were very, very strong and gigantic people. They were completely crushed. They were sprawled all over the floor, all over the ground, right? Their bodies were all over the place. And they just looked like dead, hollow logs, right? If you cut down trees, hollow logs, they're completely broken, sunken in, and they're all over the place. That's how they were. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely destroyed them. So we go through these examples so that, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, because they're intended to be a reminder for us. They're intended to be things which we derive lessons from, so that we don't fall into the same mistakes as the people of Ad and all the other people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has punished and mentioned in the Quran. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us safe. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us that we follow in the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن المجيد ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات وذكر الحكيم. أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. Dear brothers and sisters, in conclusion, to just highlight and go over the lessons that we can learn from the people of Ad are: Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, gives respite to the oppressors, but is never unmindful or unaware of their actions. This is something we need to keep in mind, that in today's time we see that there are many people and many nations that are oppressing others. We look at the people of Burma, we look at the people all throughout the world, where there are people that are being punished, they're people that are being oppressed unjustly for no reason at all, right? They're being treated unjustly and being oppressed. And we ask that what's going on? Why is nothing happening to the oppressors? Why is nothing happening? Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not helping these people? What we need to keep in mind is, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates to the people from the story of the people of Ad, is that Allah gives respite to these sort of people, these oppressive people, these people who abuse and misuse their power. Allah gives them respite, Allah gives them time. But Allah never forgets and Allah is never unmindful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تَعْجَلْ عَلَيْهِمْ فَلَا تَعْجَلْ عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّمَا نُعُدُّ لَهُمْ عَدًّا. That don't try to hasten anything, right? إِنَّمَا نُعُدُّ لَهُمْ عَدًّا. That the days that we're just giving them a few days to let them do what they want, and then we're going to come after them. So that's a reminder for us, that a lesson that we learn from the people of Ad. Another lesson that we can summarize is that Prophet Hud, like many of the other prophets and even Rasulullah ﷺ, was outnumbered, and apparently it seemed like they were beat, right? It was just one person or a very minor group of people that was going against the majority, right? And we see that the people that they were going against they had outnumbered the prophets and their followers. Yet they continuously relied on the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they continuously made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help. Hud alayhi salam would continue to say, "Inni tawakkaltu ala Allahi Rabbi wa Rabbikum." That indeed I trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my trust and reliance is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will take care of me. A beautiful hadith narrated by Ibn Abbas radhiyallahu anhu and recorded by Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. He says that حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل قالها إبراهيم عليه السلام حين ألقي في النار. That when Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire, ومحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وقالها محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم حين قالوا إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was facing a very difficult task, where all the enemy forces had gathered together and began to fight against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, both of these great prophets, they made this one dua, which was Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient for us and Allah will take care of us, right? This is the sort of reliance that the prophets, the Anbiya alayhi salam, had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a reminder for us that when people are going, or when we're going through difficulties, when we're being oppressed, we need to keep our reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to say that we don't do anything. We do whatever we can. We make our efforts. But at the end of the day, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who will put anything into place and into effect. And lastly, one of the things that we learn is that arrogance is something which is completely hated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a person is arrogant, Allah will completely destroy them. Whereas when a person is humble and a person displays humility, that is a characteristic which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. In the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that a person with a single ounce of, or the weight of an atom, a person who has that sort of, even that little bit of arrogance in their heart, Allah will not let them enter into Jannah. They'll be thrown into Jahannam. Why? Because pride and greatness is only reserved for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to be proud. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has the right to claim greatness. No one else can. And when anyone tries to claim greatness, when anyone acts arrogantly, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes that as an offense. You're now crossing your line with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroys people like that, arrogant people, right? And again, we mentioned that Allah gives these people time. Allah gives them time. Allah has set aside a number of days for them. But when the time comes, Allah will take care of them, right? So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from arrogance, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us people who have humility and humbleness in our lives. I mean, a beautiful Arabic poem, it says that كَمْ جَاهِلْ مُتَوَادِعْ سَطْرَ التَّوَاضُعْ جَهْلَهُ, that how many ignorant people there are who are humble, and it was their humility that covered their arrogance. And whereas how many learned people, how many mumayyizun fi ilmihi, how many people there were that were very, very knowledgeable, yet their arrogance completely destroyed them. Right? What the poem is saying is that arrogance is something which will completely destroy all the other good things you have. Whereas humility will just make you better and will cover all the bad things that you have. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us people who are humble and have humility in our lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from arrogance. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to learn these lessons and put them into our lives and avoid the mistakes that the people of the past made. Before we begin our salah, a number of people have asked us to make dua for them. They've been going through some difficulties, some health-related issues. So we make dua for all these sisters and all these people in our community that are going through these difficulties. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them full recovery, full health, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them with reward them for their patience. Ameen. Aqimus salah.